Judy Heumann has been at the heart of the milestones that have marked the progress of disability rights in America over the past half-century. She has lived a life of innovation, determination, compassion, and advocacy, and her work has changed what disability means in America.
I learned that I could make a difference by speaking up for myself. And I learned that I could make a difference by working with others and having groups of us speak on behalf of ourselves.
She just was able to bring people together, focus attention, articulate not only a need, but a way to solve that need. And she has all of the characteristics of somebody who can bring about change without burning down the city.
It was such a discovery for me that you could do anything you wanted to, that you felt you wanted, you could achieve if you worked at it hard enough. Judy taught me that.
Judy was born to Jewish immigrant parents in 1947. At that time, New York was in the midst of a polio epidemic. At 18 months, she contracted the disease and would be a wheelchair user for the rest of her life.
Once my parents realized the nature of my disability and that it wasn't going away, my mother said, you have to get a good education because you can't depend on anybody else to support you but yourself. When I was 5, she took me to school, but I wasn't allowed to go to school because I was in a wheelchair and the principal wouldn't accept me.
Heumann's parents faced systematic disability discrimination in the school system, but they weren't strangers to discrimination.
They were survivors from the Holocaust, and they never saw their parents again and never saw those living grandparents when they left, who died also in the concentration camps. So I think the issue of strength and the ability to move forward in spite of adversity is something that they survived on, and that was imparted to me also.
As Judy entered high school, she realized all the more what was being denied to her by society.
I couldn't get on a bus, I couldn't get on a train, I couldn't get in a car, I couldn't go out to a store and use the bathroom, I couldn't go to the movies. I couldn't do things that my friends in high school and college were doing, not because, again, I was not capable of doing it, but because the environment around me wasn't accessible, and there was an urgency that people like myself were feeling that we had to make things happen quicker.
Congress passes the most sweeping civil rights bill ever to be written into the law, and thus reaffirms the conception of equality for all men that began with Lincoln and the Civil War 100 years ago.
With the Civil Rights Act of 1964, proponents of social change now had a legal basis to push through the reforms that were so overdue. But laws are just words. It takes committed individuals to see that they are enforced. When she was declared unqualified to teach because she couldn't walk, Judy took the New York Board of Education to court and won. There was Disabled in Action, a group Judy formed to break down more barriers. She led a series of demonstrations following President Nixon's veto of the 1973 Rehabilitation Act. When Congress eventually overrode the veto, Judy had emerged as one of the country's leading disabled rights activists.
We needed to be a sophisticated group of disabled individuals and supporters to be able to get effective regulations developed to take a 24-word piece of legislation and really make it work.
It was this attitude that caught the attention of none other than Ed Roberts, one of the Rolling Quads, who was challenging the status quo on the West Coast. He asked her to come to Berkeley.
Well, I was intrigued by Ed, and I thought it could be really fun to be able to work with somebody like him, because I think we shared a similar vision of what we wanted to have society become and our view of empowerment for disabled individuals.
With Ed Roberts, Judy and others established the nation's first Center for Independent Living.
I think the important parts of the CILs is that they're really empowerment-based. So as disabled people are working within those organizations, they themselves are instructing other disabled individuals by example.
Having fought the school system herself, she identified with children with disabilities who were still being denied a fair and equal education. So in the mid-1970s, she relocated to Washington to work on the development of IDEA, legislation that required free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive setting.
So I guess a lot of what I've always been dealing with is this issue of urgency and the importance of education, and how every lost day of a quality education, not just for disabled children, but for all children, puts them at a disadvantage.
By 1977, key provisions of the Rehabilitation Act, namely Section 504, had not been enforced, and the disabled community was impatient and angry. On April 5th, activists staged sit-ins at federal buildings across the country. In San Francisco, it lasted for 28 days and showed Americans that the disability rights movement was a force to be reckoned with. By 1983, Ronald Reagan was beginning his second term as president, and laws protecting the rights of disabled people were becoming part of the mainstream. Building on their successes, Judy, Ed, along with Joan Leon, were ready for the next step. With Judy's focus on policy, Ed's desire to take the cause global, and Joan's research agenda, the World Institute on Disability was formed.
There was work being done in research, in public policy activities in the area of disability, but basically it wasn't being strongly influenced by the voices of disabled people. So one of the prime purposes of the creation of the World Institute on Disability was to bring the voices and vision of disabled individuals into the public policy arena in the area of disability.
For the next decade, Judy would serve as co-director of WID, encouraging dialogues and conducting training sessions across the nation. Also during that time, she would take part in possibly her greatest achievement, aiding in the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990.
In the past, disability has been a cause for shame. This forced acceptance of second-class citizenship has stripped us as disabled people of pride and dignity. This is not the way we as Americans should have to live our lives.
Like many, I'm an impassioned person, feel a level of urgency, and also have felt increasingly motivated by the successes that we've made, at the same time very frustrated by the fact that there are still millions of disabled people here in the United States and abroad who are being discriminated against and not being given equal opportunity.
During the past 20 years, Judy has remained at the forefront of disability advocacy, serving in positions for the Clinton administration, the World Bank, and as a special advisor for the State Department.
I'm excited to be a part of the work that the Obama administration and Secretary Clinton are advancing to really allow the U.S. to be an example for other countries around the world to advance the civil and human rights for disabled people.
Sit-ins in San Francisco. Demonstrations in Denver. Protests in Washington, D.C. At Gallaudet and before Congress. People marched and organized and testified, and laws changed and minds changed, and progress was won.
In 1991, she was leading a training session in Oregon when she first saw Jorge.
I fell in love with his shoulders. When I met him, I saw him from the back and I loved his shoulders, and that's really the truth. That was how it all started. And then, over time, we have, I think, a deep affection for our vision. We have different components in our lives that come together that make an interesting new whole.
Over the past 50 years, the place of people with disabilities in America has changed drastically, and few people have played as much of a role in that change as Judy Heumann.
Judy taught me that if somebody says no, what they really mean is not yet. And she was absolutely right. And I have used it and again and again. And I saw her use it again and again, and she never gave up.
Judy inspires and takes the time to empower young people with disabilities to be leaders and to take a role in shaping the movement.
She represents kind of a lever in society that can see opportunities and take advantage of them.
Judy's changed the way things work. And now, by mentoring and empowering young people, she's paving the way for a new generation to be involved politically.
As one person, you can make a difference, but as a village, you can have a much stronger ability to make more significant reforms. And I think my life really has been about that, not doing things alone, but doing things with other people.
For her service, compassion, leadership, and advocacy, she is the recipient of the 2010 National Courage Award.